Hello everyone. So we'll try to understand what exactly is the meaning, nature and scope of mathematical and quantitative reasoning. So this is a very fundamental yet interesting topic that comes under unit first, that is introduction to mathematical and quantitative reasoning. So firstly, let's have a brief introduction. What is mathematical and quantitative reasoning? So, for understanding this, let's consider a classroom scenario. So, imagine a teacher in a classroom is looking at students' marks. After a test, a student basically gets different mark ranges. Right, so this process is basically analyzed by a teacher, and what a teacher see is just not marks or numbers. Rather, from means of that marks, they try to understand who needs extra help. That means that who are the students who needs extra support from their side. And why is performance different? In spite of giving the common instruction to all the students in a classroom, why is certain students performing differently? Right? And what is the normal pattern that exists in a classroom? Again, these observations is merely not facts. This is basically what we call quantitative reasoning in action in a very practical setting. Right? It is about learning how to think logically, analyze information, and make meaningful decisions using numbers. Here, the central idea is basically numbers, and analyzing facts out of these numbers is what we call quantitative reasoning. And in a world full of data, these skills are no longer optional. They're not optional. They're very much essential for every learner, especially for us as future teachers, right? So this basically acts as a prerequisite for our teaching career. Next is, let's try to understand what exactly is the meaning of mathematical reasoning, right? So mathematical reasoning refers to the process of using logical thinking to understand mathematical concepts and solve problems. That means that it is the process of using logical thinking to understand mathematical concepts and basically solve problems by means of that. Okay, so it involves drawing conclusions based on facts, identifying patterns, applying rules and formulas logically. It is just not calculations, but thinking behind the calculations. We are merely not focusing on the calculation aspects of numbers, but yeah, we are somehow thinking behind the calculations and digging deeper into the conceptual aspects of numbers, right? So this is what we call the mathematical reasoning, the process of using logic as the central means of thinking. Next is, let's try to understand what is the meaning of quantitative reasoning. So what is the key difference between mathematical reasoning and quantitative reasoning? So first is, quantitative reasoning is basically the ability to understand numerical data. That means that it is the ability of a person, or it is the ability by means of which a person understands the numerical data. Second one is that it tries to interpret and analyze information. Just after understanding, a person would be able to interpret and analyze information. That means that after analysis, that is breaking down of information into different parts and try to interpret conclusions out from that data. Okay, so that is interpret and analyze information. And apply mathematical concepts in real life situations. That is deriving meaning out of mathematics. That means that applying mathematical concepts in a wide range of aspects in real life situations. That is broadening the scope of mathematics by means of applying it into our day-to-day life. Right? It focuses more on practical use of numbers, such as interpreting graphs, percentages, and statistics. Next is, let's look upon the nature of mathematical and quantitative reasoning. So, we have covered what exactly is the meaning of mathematical and quantitative reasoning. Now, let's look upon the nature of mathematical and quantitative reasoning. Right? So, the nature of these reasoning skills can be understood through the following characteristics. Right? So, the first one is logical and systematic. That means that it follows a step-by-step process that is centrally based on logic, as simple as that. That means that it is a step-by-step and systematic process. It is structured in nature and it is based on the central idea of logic. And it is based on certain objective. That means that it is centered around the facts, numbers and evidence, not just personal opinions. right? And this is basically analytical in nature. That means that analysis is a central term that means breaking down something into simpler parts so that a person can interpret the main core idea of a data in a very simple manner. Okay, so that means that involves breaking down complex problems into simpler parts. Next one is problem solving oriented. It means that it helps in finding solutions to real life and academic problems. And finally, it is evidence based. Conclusions are drawn from the data and observations. Okay, so we derive conclusions out from the data and observations that we have gained from our understanding. So, it is logical and systematic, it is based on perfect objective, it is analytical in nature, and it is problem solving oriented, and it is strongly evidence based. So, this covers the nature of mathematical and quantitative reasoning. Now, let's move on to the types of mathematical reasoning. So, majorly, there are two types that we can find in mathematical reasoning. First is inductive reasoning, and the second one is deductive reasoning. So, by means of inductive reasoning, we mean it moves from specific observations to general conclusions. That means that from known to unknown. That means that so we try to move from a specific observation. We have certain specific observations, and by means of that, we try to derive at general conclusions from such observations. Example is observing patterns and predicting outcomes. Okay, so that means we are examining the observation patterns and predicting what would be the possible outcomes from that. Right? And the second one is deductive reasoning, moves from general rules to specific conclusions, that is from unknown to known aspects. Okay, so example is applying formulas to solve problems. Now let's talk about the scope of mathematical and quantitative reasoning. So it is basically a very versatile theme, and it involves a major scope in the education, daily life, science and research, and decision making. That means that it helps students in the context of education to understand concepts deeply, improves learning outcomes, and identify learning gaps. Okay, in the context of daily life, we can say that it is helpful in budgeting, shopping, time management, making comparisons, and decisions. In the field of science and research, it helps or facilitates data analysis and interpretation, formulating conclusions based on evidence, and so on.